Hey everybody, Dr. Mosley again. Scott, what are we talking about this week?
Hey Matt, yeah, we are going to be talking about, we are entering that sort of phase in the soda pop culture class where we're looking at sneakers. And the first thing that this thing has inspired in me is we should think about doing a global issues class just on sneaker culture. I think it would be,
It would totally be able to happen.
I mean, it's
I'm not
really
sure.
cool.
I'm not sure who would sign up, but it'd be awesome. I mean, people after this conversation might realize there's a lot more to it than
Right.
what
And
what
that's what
numbers.
that's kind of the reaction I've gotten from students so far is that wow, didn't know about this, didn't know. I mean, everybody's perspective tends to be in their own, defined by their own experience, right?
Yeah,
So but everybody thinks these things are sort of fresh and new, and a lot of them build on the successes of the sneakers that have played a role in popular culture, or popular culture creating or turning a local sort of very functional sneaker brand into a national or even global phenomenon. And that's what we're talking about in this. We are talking about Vans. And the quick story on Vans is that they were born in 1966 by a couple of guys in Southern California who saw that skateboarders were having a hard time staying on their board.
yeah.
So they created a sole that was a little stickier, that would allow the skateboarders, give them a little more grip, if you will, on the board itself. And from there, it took off. It took time. It's one of those sort of long-term overnight sensations.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll chat about here
As soon
today.
as it flipped quick.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
It's kind of like people are like, oh, this overnight sensation band, and you look in like, but they've been playing together for 10 years.
Exactly right. There are a lot of parallels to music, right? And these things that people just don't see all the run up. And the slide that I just threw up here is I tell the story of Vans being created for skateboarders in the mid 60s in Southern California. And one thing I want to come back to on this is how could this have taken this long in the 21st century, or is it just the internet that makes everything so sort of immediate? And we should chat about that as well. But the story that I tell here is that it's not 1966, it's not 1970, it's not 1976, it's 1980, or 80, I believe it was 80.
Yeah.
And I am in Dutchess County, New York, which is about 70 miles north of New York City. I'm in high school, had never heard of this shoe.
82.
82. All right. I was a senior in high school and had never heard of this shoe. And as young people did in the early 80s, went to the mall to see a movie, which is antique already. And we went to see a film called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And Fast Times at Ridgemont High was about a high school experience of a group of teenagers in Southern California. And there was one particular actor in there who played Sean Penn, who played who played the character of Jeff Spicoli. And Jeff Spicoli was
classic role.
Did you have any Jeff Spicolis in your young adult life that you recall, Matt?
We'll get a Jeff Spicoli every now and then still here, not as extreme, but yeah, no, it's if the students haven't seen this yet, I mean, go ask your parents and
right.
And yeah, it's interesting. Spicoli was a cultural, I mean, that was just a movement, and he could have been just and he wasn't as central, but he was an important character.
Right. Oh, and became there are parts of this film that became iconic in and of themselves. Some of them we'll discuss here, some of them we'll avoid talking about. But the Sean Penn character, Jeff Spicoli, was very young in Sean Penn's career, is this kind of stoner dude, skater, surfer, and I and my buddies are sitting in the movie theater, laughing at this sort of poignant comedy about these high school students, very much like we were in our own sort of way, on the East Coast. And one of the ways that they created this authentic character around the Jeff Spicoli was to put him in these shoes. And it had been 14 years since they had been created, but that shoe and that style had not made its way to the East Coast, even to places. I mean, we weren't far outside New York City, so it's not like we were in an isolated geography, but we left that film. These shoes played such a pivotal sort of supporting role, if you will, and that Jeff Spicoli, this wonderful character that everybody fell in love with, was wearing multiple times, interacting with, banging them against his head, you know, and doing weird things that we said we have immediately. Every guy I knew had seen that movie and needed those shoes, and we ran into the mall looking for them, and of course they were nowhere to be found. And it was several weeks later before we heard that, okay, somebody found these shoes somewhere. I think we drove south more toward New York City to find them. Yeah. It's an example of a functional thing that had existed for a long time and had been part of a very specific, narrowly defined culture, sort of the skater culture, surfer culture, and a specific geography. And prior to the web could last that way for years, and then a casting director or a costume designer who wanted to make that character Spicoli look authentic in Southern California said, of course, he has to wear these shoes. He wore them, and the rest, as they say, literally in this case for Vans, is history.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, people probably don't realize back then the world was a lot bigger.
True.
Because you didn't find out about stuff easily.
No.
I don't remember having internet access readily available until like close to 2000. I mean, I had a little bit in like 97, 98.
Right.
But really, it didn't really kind of hit mainstream. Right. Even then, you didn't have the sharing of information the same way we have now.
No.
So this was huge.
Yeah.
This wasn't something that Vans planned either.
No. And that was why, and that's just a fascinating thing about sort of then versus now. And this, you get in these really interesting sort of speculative discussions about, you know, could something like this take that long now? I mean, to your point, the production of these shoes was in no way ready to throw hundreds of thousands of pairs out there at the when this movie hit and became very popular. But you know, it was the holy grail. If you were not in Southern California, trying to find these checkerboard Vans, which was an impossibility for weeks and weeks and weeks after that, such that the first pairs that we owned were not Vans brand. They were a cheap sort of knockoff, and they were
because you didn't know,
right?
They never said Vans,
right?
I mean, right here it says Fast Times if you look at the screen, but that's a reproduction.
Exactly.
Back then, it was just somebody probably on the East Coast went, "Oh crap, let's make some quick money. We got a shoe kind of similar. We can do checkerboard pattern.
Yep.
Boom.
Yep.
You know."
And it was, so it's one of those examples of this thing just sort of happening, I believe organically, by a costume designer who said, okay, this is the character, this is what this kind of person's like in real life. They should wear these kind of shoes because that's what they wear here in Southern California. And it became this sort of life of its own, such that it was months later before somebody got their hands on a real pair. Nowadays, with sort of the immediacy of the internet and the immediacy of those sorts of things, these organic trends take days or weeks prior, as opposed to years in this case, to cross over. Do you remember when you may not be old enough? I remember when, as an undergraduate in college, working for a guy named John Nesbitt, who wrote a book called Megatrends, and Megatrends was a phenomenon in the mid '80s, and one of the trends that he identified, which is sort of quaint and antique now, is this idea that, and at the time it was very true, that trends moved from the bottom up, which is still sort of the case, and fads from the top down, and that they tended to move from west to east. In other words, California was a trend-setting state in a whole host of areas: politics, environmental issues, consumer products,
Everybody
entertainment.
wanted to be from California.
Right.
I mean, people don't get that now because like politics and everything else happens.
Right.
But growing up, California was this magical land.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, even you were near New York City, one of the greatest cities in America, and still we looked to California for all that. We wanted to be those beach bum surfer skater kids,
right?
So much so that I wore a fanny pack in the 80s, and that is just degrading. That's right.
That's the kind of thing you don't live down. It's the kind of thing you don't live down.
No. And by the time that we got those, it was out of style in California. We just didn't know it.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. And it's a fascinating thing. And it begs that question of, okay, in the immediate world of the web 2.0 or 3.0, wherever we're on now, because you made the point that even in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the internet existed, it was very much a one-way thing. You would go on there and log on, and you could go to a site, and it would essentially be the contact information for whatever the business is you were interested in. They may have a few pages. There was no two-way communication. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to post things and have answers and have real-time sort of engagement and interaction. That was into the 2000s before that became common as bandwidths.
Well, not just that,
expanded.
but like better websites and stuff.
Right.
Google, I don't remember when it came about, but web crawler was absolutely a nightmare.
It was, for sure. Finding things.
Oh, goodness gracious. It was impossible. But yeah.
And
anyway,
so,
sorry.
no. But you're right. I mean, and so it's an interesting sort of question, isn't it? I mean, these guys had the chance, the two original founders of Vans, to try and fail and refine and create this thing and this authentic sort of brand with this utilitarian purpose. That where they were getting feedback from their consumer, their user, the people who are buying these and creating them for them. It had that opportunity to grow and build and then become this overnight sort of success. I wonder if in a time, if this were to be now, and one, they wouldn't have gotten the shoes in the movie unless they paid, probably, right?
Yeah, but if you think about this movie, and I looked it up real quick, this is the first movie written by Cameron Crowe. Before he was Cameron Crowe. I mean, that sounds stupid, but at some point, it was just some dork who was writing a book. I mean, kind of, right?
Right.
Well, he worked for Rolling Stone, and he did all sorts of really cool stuff that people should know about. But it was his first movie, and it's the first movie by the director too. So this movie, the chances of it actually catching on and getting the steam that it did, it was the right place at the right time. Right. Now, I would say modern thing is Stranger Things has had a similar influence, but it brought back the retro look, and it was more well planned. Yeah. And companies, like you said, they probably paid to be in there. Right. Where this here, no, and it's and you make I don't know whether I'm going to give you credit for teeing up and teasing a future episode of our podcast here, because it's really interesting, because it's around the same time. This was 82. Season 3 of Stranger Things was 1985. The role that New Coke plays in season 3 of Stranger Things, which was negotiated by Jeff Cottrell when he was at Coke, who is going to be a future guest with us. And Jeff is currently the chief marketing officer at Topgolf, but has had an amazing storied career and is a sneaker aficionado, having worked at Converse for a long time as well. But
but was the person who negotiated the Stranger Things, Coca-Cola, and New Coke.
I mean, how smart. I mean, you got a period piece. Might as well sit there and own up on one of the biggest egg on the face moments for Coke.
Right. Sure.
Which people don't get. Like,
right.
People,
and became this iconic sort of moment in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Restaurants stopped serving Coke for decades because of this. And it was ridiculous because New Coke was a better product. Anyway,
no, there, it's out. But so, yes. So stay tuned, everybody. But it begs that question of like, is this phenomenon, and Vans took off from there and reinvented itself again and again and again on the wings of this.
Relevant.
Right. And could that happen again? I guess is what I'm getting. I mean,
it would be so tough. Because I mean, Vans saw, wait, this happened. Great, awesome. 90s come along. That's 10 years later.
Right.
Wait, things start to lag. Right. I mean, you got product life cycle going on.
Sure.
What do? Warped Tour.
Right. Yes.
I mean, now all of a sudden we don't just have skateboarders, but we got pop and like metalheads wearing our stuff.
Yep.
Right. All these kids who just don't belong or whatever. Awesome.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Well, what do we do next? Type of thing.
Yeah. And it does, I think, it does, it's a really interesting point that you make, because it's as if Vans, which had gone through at least one bankruptcy, I know, during its lifespan, that you can trace their aha moment about the potential expanded impact they could have on popular culture to the initial appearance in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And sometimes that's enough to change your thinking so that you begin to think about things like, okay, what's the convergence of skater culture, our apparel and shoes and music, and how does that all work together? And you end up having that, the Vans Warped Tour, to which you speak, which is one of the more successful of those tours in history. And it's, in the academic world, I mean, I know we love sort of thinking about, gee, I wonder if this hadn't happened, would this have happened? And how does that?
Yeah, Vans was kind of a catalyst for some other ones coming along. I don't remember who came first, the Warped Tour or Lollapalooza.
Right.
But I mean, they incorporated skateboarding ramps and BMX and all sorts of stuff. It was a heck of a time to be alive.
Yeah. And as we sort of put a bow on this, I mean, so much of it, because whether intentionally or unintentionally, and in all of my research, I was not able to find specifically what the specific catalyst or who the specific catalyst was. Was it Vans, who, the founders or the folks who were managing the company at the time, who heard about the film and said, hey, you need to do this? My instinct tells me it was somebody in costuming who said, here's our character, here's our script.
They probably had a brother or a cousin who was a stoner surfer skateboarder. So, you know what? This is a perfect, or it could have even been Sean Penn. This is not unheard of.
Right.
The Big Lebowski. All the clothes that Jeff Bridges wears are his own. The jellies, the vest, the t-shirts. It's just him.
Right.
He just happened to incorporate a slacker stoner into max.
Into his closet.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, this is kind of what okay. Nuts.
And of such tiny little moments are great brands made a lot of times. But the important thing here, I guess it'll be my last thought, and then I'd love for you to sort of give me your final thoughts on this, is the reason that Vans, even if the people at Vans were not proactively pursuing this opportunity, it was their dedication to a specific, purposeful, utilitarian shoe that they did and perfected over time, that was adopted organically by this culture, that it became such a defining sort of part of that look,
Yeah.
that the folks in Hollywood said, we can't do this character without him wearing those shoes.
Well, exactly. I mean, if it wasn't ingrained in the culture of skaters and surfers, then it could have easily just been Chuck Taylors,
Right.
which
Exactly.
were the hip thing to wear
Sure.
at the same time.
Yep.
You know, and
Yep.
nobody would have known any different.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I think end of the day, whatever Vans did to have that type of karma, it was worth it. You
Right.
know?
Work hard, good things happen. Right.
Well, and sometimes it's, I mean, meeting a need, you know,
Right. Yep.
and then
Yep.
when you embrace the random stuff that comes up, do you care that, you know, kids in South Dakota who have never even seen a skateboard in person are buying your shoes? Hell no.
Right.
Like, all right, sweet.
Right.
Let's make
Exactly
it completely
right.
insulated. No.
Exactly right. I mean, yeah, it's a wonderful sort of testament to work hard, meet your consumer need, evolve as your consumer evolves, be everything they need you to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes it explodes in your favor, right?
Well, and it's exactly like the last episode where we talked about the throwback jerseys.
Yep. Right.
They could have easily ignored it and been like, no, we don't do that. So they went, wait, we can make money.
Yeah. Right. Let's embrace this. Let's embrace it.
We're not going to make these jerseys look dumb. We're just going to make them bigger.
Right.
Sweet.
Right. Yep. Embrace, and that's another lesson, isn't it? Is like, more often than not, if you let the consumer move you the direction they want to go and you follow them, and listen to them and respond authentically, you'll do well. That's a great lesson. This was a fun one. I'm telling you, there's something to that. We started talking about Nike Cortez in the last class, and that's a future, which is just a fascinating brand. And
got to get Robbie on for shoes, because I mean, the students don't understand this guy surfed in the mid 2000s, like, I mean, really, every student here was young. To find a throwback pair of like 1976 Nike like athletic shoes because he wanted to wear them. He tracked somebody down and got a pair. Just ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the
we need to get
culture
them.
We need to
get them. All right. That's our mission for the next podcast. This is always fun, man. I appreciate the time.
All right, likewise. Bye.
Bye-bye.